Welcome everyone. Today is the 27th of November 2024. This is the annual general meeting of the NZGDA. This is my first AGM as chair, and this is my fourth NZGDA AGM as board member, but it is a great pleasure to be able to present the meeting this year and to speak to some of our latest achievements, speak to the state of the industry, throw it over to Lance to speak to the financial and the Treasurer's report, as well as some future strategy thoughts that we have, as well as introduce the new board members that have been elected. So I'm going to just give a quick opening karakia and then get kicked off. But thank you everyone for being here and yeah, just being curious about what the NZGDA is up to. So Tutawa mai runga, tutawa mai raro, tutawa mai roto, tutawa mai waho, kia tau ai, te Māori tū, te Māori ora, ki te katoa, haumie, huiei, taikie. Thank you everyone. The meeting has officially been kicked off. So the agenda today, just the formalities are to go over the minutes from last year. These were circulated, I think, a week ago for anyone curious. But if anyone's wanting more detail, happy to send that. But I'll go through quickly the minutes. A state of the industry, I thought it was important just to touch on some of the highlights from the year and where we are as a games industry locally and internationally. I'll talk a bit about our strategic plan at the NZGDA and what we agreed on as a board back in January when we had our strategy day and some of the outcomes of that. And then we're going to go to the Treasurer's report, where we'll go through a profit and loss of the NZGDA, but also the NZGDC, which is such a big event for our association that does, make a big impression on the numbers. So we'll touch on that as well as our balance sheet. Important to note is that is for the financial year ending 2024. So it's in 6 months' time we'll be putting together the financials of the next financial year. So that's just important to note as the financial year versus calendar year with some of these discussions that we'll be having. And then I'll go through the team at the NZGDA, how we, for those that aren't aware, how we come up with our board member structure that's listed in our constitution, and who has been voted into our board this year, as well as our operations team. And then I'll be handing it over to Joy to give a few updates of things that will be coming up from a membership. There's a membership committee that's been put in place to discuss the membership fee and certain areas around that, as well as a constitutional update that we need to do in the new year. So that will be touched on then. And then I'll talk a bit about some future strategy thoughts that are on our minds that the community have suggested that we will take with us into our new board with our strategy day in the new year, and just give a bit of a overview of that. So with that said, the first agenda item, which is just to approve the AGM minutes from last year. There isn't actually any context to this because there wasn't anything that was voted in. It was the video can be found on YouTube that Chelsea ran last year if you are interested in looking at it. But just as a formality to approve the minutes from last year, I'm going to motion them as I am technically considered a member as well of the association, and then I will get someone to second the movement if possible. If someone can just call out or say if you're able to. Thank you, Lance. Lance will second those. But as I said, this isn't there wasn't any actions from that or voting that we wanted to approve. That full video is on YouTube. Just search 2023 NZGDA AGM and you'll see it there. This will also be recorded and posted on our YouTube channel to review for anyone interested as well. Cool. Just taking a quick moment to pause Making sure, Joy, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me fine, if everything's going well? Okay, awesome. Okay, so a few things. I thought it was really important just because our survey results came out um, a couple months ago, and we spoke a lot about this at NZGDC. In the past, the survey results came out too late after the AGM, and right now we're in a good place to speak to those to the state of our local industry this year, which is really great. So I thought it was really cool to have a slide just talking about where we are as an industry. And one great milestone to celebrate is our industry is now earning over $500 million every year. So this last year we calculated 548 million that our industry has earned, which is a 26% year-on-year growth in revenue, and that's a 5-year average of 25%. And that's really great to see, especially just looking at the data over the last few years. There was a lot of uncertainty around how COVID might affect us, how Australian pressure might affect us, and just seeing a result like this with such high growth was such a fantastic feeling. And I think it's in part due to things like the GDSR, things like our local infrastructure, things like code, continuing to flourish and providing a lot of excitement for the future of our industry, and showing that there's support for games in New Zealand has meant that we've retained a lot of the talent that may have been considering leaving. In our survey, we also found that 88% of studios that were surveyed are predicting that income will either maintain or grow, which gives us really strong confidence that we are on our road to $1 billion in revenue. And I think that's a really great. It's a really great sentence that I think when it comes to our lobbying efforts, earning $1 billion as an industry is definitely something we want to hit in the next 2 to 5 years, depending on our growth rate. We're really optimistic, and we really want to push and get as much support from the government as possible to get to $1 billion as early as possible. And we have tons of things that we would like to see to get to that as early as possible. Some notable achievements that happened this year and there's more than this actually, but Abiotic Factor by Deepfield Games, which is a code supported studio. They released an early access back in May, and they announced that they had sold 600,000 copies in just 3 months, which is absolutely incredible. Dredge, which was a massive highlight last year, with selling over 1 million copies within 6 months. They this year were nominated for 4 BAFTAs as well as dozens of other awards over the course of the last 18 months, and that was fantastic for a New Zealand studio to have that accolade given. And they're also releasing a mobile game in the next few months, which is really exciting, just to see a studio kind of grow and expand in that way. And then something that Mario Winans from Pickpock made aware the other day is Path of XR2, Tales of the Shire, and Into the Dead Our Darkest Days are currently all in the top 100 most wish-listed games on Steam at the moment, which is really awesome for 3 games made in New Zealand from different studios in different corners of the country, being able to hit such a high bar of international recognition and success at wish lists are such a great indicator of future success, and these titles haven't released yet, and that's something we're really excited about for the next 12 months, is to see these titles release and capture audiences from all around the world. There are other things I didn't write here, things like Beyond VR being mentioned at the Apple event, promoting the Apple Vision Pro at the beginning of the year, and just little success stories like that are happening more and more, and just make me so proud of what we are accomplishing here in New Zealand and as a small industry. Our productivity per employee is almost 500,000, which is a crazy number, and that shot up incredibly from last year because we didn't actually increase with that many full-time employees. So seeing that number increase, the amount of revenue increase based on our employees was awesome to see. So yeah, that's just a bit of a recap. If you're interested in going into a bit more detail, there's quite a lot of data that we extracted from the studios and we put online at nzgda.com. You can find it. You can find all previous years' surveys as well if you want to go back into the history and see some of the other trends. But you can find that on our website or just Googling 2024 industry survey NZGDA. That should pop up. And yeah, the other thing I wanted to touch on, Newzoo is a great resource for industry game figures, and they put out an annual report as well. And I just wanted to touch on the state of the global industry. They listed a 2.1% year-on-year growth. So looking at that compared to what we've achieved locally with 26% is fantastic, and something we should all be proud of is hitting above the industry average. I also think it's fascinating that with $187 billion being the size of the global games industry, that's in US dollars, I believe. So it's above 200 billion in New Zealand dollars, which means that New Zealand only accounts for 0.25% of the global industry. And I just thought that was a really interesting metric to just see over time kind of how much of the global industry we're covering. And it's such a massive industry, with massive countries releasing massive titles, and we're kind of in our own little corner doing what we do best. So yeah, that was interesting. And then the other piece of data I wanted to mention was how many games are being released on Steam these days. Last year's results, I think this came out in January, that there were 14,338 games released on Steam last year, and it's an incredibly competitive space, and it's I believe that's only trending upwards, but also the trend of gamers is going up as well. So it's a fascinating space, and it's an innovative space where there's lots of activity happening, and I'm just really proud that we are actively developing in emerging technology areas. We're developing successful titles on all the platforms all across the country. So it's great to see, and yeah, wanted to make sure that everyone understood that context the way that I understand it, because I think it's great. Awesome. So let's move on to the strategic plan, and this is more now taking a turn and focusing more on the NZGDA and our efforts over the last year. So first, just our mission statement, and this is a great place to start. This mission statement here is what we came to the conclusion with our board in our January strategy day. It's pretty similar to what it was before. It's just a slight iteration of some of the wording, but we came to champion and nurture the growth of the game development industry here in Aotearoa, and that's really what we're here to do. That's how we calculate our North Star of where we want to go and how we see ourselves developing. And if we feel like we're championing and nurturing our industry as it's growing, then we feel like we're doing a good job. And that's been really cool to see. Obviously, it's just a sentence, and there's dozens of initiatives and activities that we do every year. So this is a very, very high level description, but I think for those especially learning about the NZGDA now, or might not have a lot of history with the NZGDA, this is I think a really good place to start. So breaking it down a little bit more, in the last 24 months, we've transitioned into a membership organization. Before we were a very operational board, and all of the operations were done within the board members, and that changed when we decided that for the long-term the long-term success and the ability to be more impactful. It required us to become a membership organization that received revenue that we could put towards a salaried operations team, and that's where Joy and Gina come in, and that's what's really changed our. I wouldn't say the strategy has changed, but how we execute on that strategy has definitely changed, and it's made us able to accomplish a lot more. It's made us able to venture further than where the individual board members that were doing the operations were able to what they were able to achieve. And I believe we're still figuring out exactly what that model looks like and what that operational strategy looks like. But at a high level, the core initiatives that we focus on that will probably be indicative of where the next year goes at a high level is we have events that the NZGDA run. First off, obviously NZGDC and Wellington Games Week being a mass, like, the pillar event for game developers in New Zealand. That's a massive event that takes up the biggest amount of time. But outside of events, outside of NZGDC, there's other events such as investor meetups. There's virtual game dev meetups. There's studio catch-ups. There's other conferences or other events and expos that we support, like Armageddon, career expos, etc. So the events category goes wide and large, and also supporting local meetups when we can, and making sure that we are helping promote and just connect the community with each other through the events happening. Speaking of community, there's a big portion of our strategy which is around providing spaces online and resources online for the community to interact with. So having a monthly newsletter where the latest news is being curated and shared with our members or anyone interested in what's happening in New Zealand, as well as online groups such as a Slack group where people can connect with each other on different topics, share news amongst each other there. So it's a lot less us having to do the curation. It's the community interacting with each other, and there's different spaces that do this. There's a Discord channel, there's a Facebook group. We have our Facebook page and our LinkedIn page, but the Facebook group is another kind of self-moderating community that people can post what they want and interact with other members of the community that way. Recognition is another big one that we've put some attention on this year, which is just bringing attention to some of the studios that are achieving amazing things. And we have our Pioneers of Play awards that we started this year to just recognize the studios that have been around for long periods of time, and we really like just having those moments of recognizing the people and the studios that have been around the longest. And we think it's so important that the new generation of developers and studios coming up know who those people are, because most of the time they're the ones helping and in the weeds, helping make the big decisions that move the industry forward, whether it's advising on the GDSR, whether it's providing media opportunities or publisher contacts to the smaller studios. That is a really strong ecosystem that we have here, and recognizing those people just helps with that serendipitous relationship that happens. Lobbying is another big one that's quite unique to the NZGDA compared to other like organizations that exist now nationally, and I'll touch on this a bit later, but organizations like Code and New Zealand On Air that now exist on a national level. Lobbying is a great area that the NZGDA can focus on that doesn't infringe on anything that Code or New Zealand On Air are doing. And we've got a great strategy. We've got a great committee that help with that work. We've got a great contract organization that helps us with our lobbying as well. And that's something that's been worked on and built on for years and years with previous chairs, building relationships with ministers and on both parties as well. And when there's a change of government, having those relationships already built up is really helpful. So the whole lobbying effort is something we do spend a lot of time on, and especially now that the GDSR exists, our lobbying efforts have switched to maintaining the GDSR and asking for more support, and really trying to go into the granular details of little things that would make a big difference for how we can support our community with that. And then resources as well, things like the member hub, which has free resources from accounting documents to legal documents to our NZGDC videos, and just trying to package all of that in a nice way for resources that the community and studios can make the most of. And there's a lot more work that we want to do around this area as well. So that's me just giving a very high level view of some of these core, I guess, strategic pillars, you could say. And going into a bit more detail, there's some things here, and I'll find better ways of communicating all of the things that we do, or that we have done this year. But this year there was a really big effort done by Joy and Gina to put together Wellington Games Week, which was an extension of NZGDC to create a umbrella event to rally other organizations to participate and create events around NZGDC and around the buzz that that we bring to Wellington each year. Quite similar to the Melbourne International Games Week model, and that was a really great test. And we're still busy going through the feedback and the outcomes from all of that, and talking about what next year could look like. And there's all other events and game jams that we've participated in. I've spoken about a lot of these in more or less in some detail, but just wanted to showcase some of the activity that's happened and some of the actions that have taken place over the last year. And I have no doubt that there's more that's not mentioned here. These are just some of the highlights. So yeah, moving on. Some of the things that I wanted to put a slide here with new activity, because these things are things that we have done for the first time, and things that we are heavily reviewing and seeing if there is value and benefit in us continuing to do these things. There's and each of these points have their own pros and cons, their own amount of effort, and what kind of value they return to us. And yeah, so that's I guess an indication of some of the abilities that we have on an annual basis to try new things and to explore different avenues and to really kickstart a new initiative if it becomes very clear that it's something that our members want or something that that we need. We have the momentum, I guess, with a strong operations team to kick off something and to give something a go. The Kiwis and Games TV series project, for example, was a partnership where we would help provide the networks while another team helps put together the pitch to get funding to showcase our studios on an episodic basis. And little relationships like that we're looking at building, little opportunities that might be low lift for us, but in partnership with someone else that could bring huge benefits to our studios. And these kinds of things, I think, as our industry is growing and becoming more, more, I don't want to say mainstream, but it's getting the attention of more media, government. There's likely going to be more unique opportunities that emerge over the next few years that having a strong operations team will make us able to find these opportunities and take them on. So yeah, finding ways to communicate that as well to our members, and understanding what bucket it fits in, and if it is something that our members support us doing, is really important. So we will continue working on that communication and finding ways and seeing what new opportunities might come up. Moving on. Okay, that's the end of my spiel on a bit of what we've done and where the industry stands. Now I'm going to pass it over to Lance to talk numbers, which is the fun part. Over to you, Lance. sorry, I didn't mention, while Lance comes on, I forgot to mention, but if there are any questions, please put them in the chat. Even with the Treasury report, if there are any questions, just throw them in the chat or just wait till the end and we'll have a moment to open up the floor for questions. So yeah, just drop them in there if you have anything, and I'll throw it over to you, Lance.
Great. Thanks, Carl. Greetings all. Okay, so we're looking back at the year that was, 31 March 2024. Profit and loss for the year shows a mixed result. We did have very good revenues for that year, including the conference, which was the 2023 conference, which fell on that year. However, our expenses increased markedly as well through that period, and that did result in a loss for the year. Now, there are a number of reasons for that. Some of that is to do with changing our model to a membership model, and also having to fund some permanent employees of the association. Some of that was to do with the conference, which we'll go on to in a second. And in fact, maybe we move on to the conference page, Carl, thanks. So as we can see here, the conference was around break even or a very small loss. That does include an allowance for the time that Joy and Gina spent organising things for the conference, but there was a less result from the previous years due to the change of venue primarily, and the deal that went with that. We can speak more to that later, but by not making a profit like the conference usually does, it did mean that overall the organisation did have a loss. Now, we are very mindful that we cannot continue making losses. They are real. If we go to the balance sheet on the next page, we can see that our membership funds has decreased down to only $30,000 left. That represents the reserves that we have in place for any contingencies, such as a conference that, for whatever reason, doesn't perform as intended. We've not really needed to draw on those reserves in the past, but certainly we were mindful of the result on the back of Conference 2023, and we've made some changes for 2024, which people would have noted. They did include not using a management company to run the conference. So we're expecting this year to be in a profitable position, but we're also considering whether we continue for our third year of the deal we had to use Takina and Wellington. I don't know if there are any questions. There don't appear to be.
Yeah. Great. Yeah.
I know people don't. I know people find financials exciting, so I try and keep it as quick as possible, but I'll add that I'm happy to have conversations separately, and certainly we can provide a full copy of the financials for people to look at if they wish to. But if there is no one in disagreement, I'd like to motion that the financials are approved for that year.
Aye.
Stephen has a question there. So yes, the conference and the financials was 2023, and 2024 is profitable. We're just finalising those figures now, but they are probably somewhere in the range of $70,000 to $80,000 of profit.
Lance, if you don't mind just reading the question for answering, that would be great.
Okay, Anna's asking a question about more detail. I think that's probably one we should take offline. Sam is looking forward to hearing about plans to close the funding gap. I mean, certainly we are looking at that. There are a number of initiatives to be discussed. Joy's going to talk to that a bit more later. But not using a management company was the single biggest difference we made in the current year with the conference, and that directly affected our profitability. Sam Evans, assuming if time spent on the 2023 conference organisation was paid for, that conference would have actually been a loss. I think Sam is referring to whether we had a subsidy or whatever. There was a subsidy from the Wellington City Council for using Takina. And certainly if that wasn't there, the conference would have made a loss. However, I will add that we probably would not have looked at Takina to start with either. So there were a number of things in play there. There's some specific questions here around catering, for example, in conference. I think these discussions should go offline, but certainly we are looking at doing things different in the future. And I'm probably not the best one to comment on what the detail of that was, but certainly we have been talking with members about improvements that could be made.
Yeah, thank you, Lance. And there's an NZGDC survey that went out, which is probably the best place to put your feedback or any suggestions around the conference specifically on what you liked and didn't like, or any areas to improve. I know we've already collected some really great feedback from there. If you didn't receive it and you'd like to, just reach out to Joy, joy at nzgda.com, and she can get it to you. Otherwise, yeah, you're welcome to just message that feedback any way that you want as well. So yes, thank you.
Okay. If we're finished with the questions, I'd like to motion that the financials be approved. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Olivier.
Thank you. Great. And moving on, thanks team, that was awesome. Moving on, let's talk about the new NZGDA team. So firstly, I want to talk a little bit about the structure of how we get our borders. This took me a while to wrap my head around. I think this visual does a great job, and for anyone new, this would be good to know for future elections as well. So every year we've moved to a 2-year cycle where half the board gets re-elected every year. So as you can see, the areas in red are what were up for election this year. So we have 8 board members in total, 3 from major studios, 3 independent game studios, and 2 from the general category, with 3 seats available to be appointed. We haven't currently appointed anyone on these seats yet. There could be some appointments made, but there's nothing worth mentioning at this stage. So there were 4 members that were re-elected this year, and then we've got our operations team on the left here, and that makes up our board and how we operate. And this was quite a big decision after some learnings that we made, where when board members were voted on just for 1 year at a time, there was a lot of what's the word? It's not brain drain. What's the word? Like legacy knowledge that was lost when board members that may have been there for a few years just left, or certain strategies that were incorporated that didn't have good enough handover. And so this 2-year cycle was a way that we figured would solve that. And so far it's been working well, other than some confusions around election time. It has been great to see this kind of leapfrogging nature. The board feels a lot less disruptive at this time of the year. So yeah, going into more detail, this was our executive board that were active this year, and just wanted to show them on screen quickly to show who was responsible for all of the all the good stuff that we got done this year. And then looking at the new board structure, I want to congratulate Lance and Alyssa for being re-elected, who were currently on the board. And I also want to welcome Anna and Stacey, who are now joining the board, who were elected in one of the independent game studio seats and in the general category. And with that, I want to bid a farewell to Sean Gere, who is an incredible individual that has such a great perspective and passion for education in games. And it's been really great having Sean be part of the board over the last few years, and I'm sure Sean will still be around and involved in any educational initiatives that we do here. Dave Oshry is finishing up a 2-year term, and Dave has brought an incredible energy to the board. He's one of the most unique founders that I've ever met, and having his energy and his humor has been really great, and definitely lifts the spirits in a lot of times. And he's also the one that's solely responsible for the Games Made in New Zealand Steam event, and that's something that he has helped run over the last few years. And don't worry, even though he's not on the board, he is still planning on running it and helping the NZGDA get that up and get that promoted and get that celebrated. It's such a great event for our community and showcasing our games, and we'll definitely continue with that. But Dave will no longer be sitting on the board. And then Matt Monk, who has an incredible role in marketing and currently works at Legend Story Studios up in Auckland. He was, I believe, just on a 1-year term, which was part of a transition year. And it's going to be really sad to see Matt go. I know he probably would have liked to contribute more when it came to marketing and PR type discussions. But Matt is an example of some of the incredible talent that we have here in the country. And what I love is the board consists of some of New Zealand's strongest advocates, and once someone might sit on the board and then leave, they still act just as much of as an advocate, even when they're out and about doing their own thing. And so that's what I really love to see. And also the history of board members and chairs that have been part of the NZGDA still exist and still support us every year. And so I just want to comment on how much I appreciate the community that we have here, and how exciting it is to see new faces. And with that, I'd like to just give a bit more context on Anna and Stacey, who are joining us for the first time as board members. So Anna is the managing director at Balancing Monkey Games indie studio in Dunedin, and Stacey Wood is the chief executive at the Broadcasting Standards Authority. So I wouldn't mind just throwing it over to Anna first off, just to say a few words on just how you feel and what you hope to contribute to being on the board over the coming calendar year, and anything else you'd like to say. And we might need to.
Lovely.
There you go.
Thanks very much. Yeah, hi, kia ora everybody. Thank you very much for electing me to the board. I've been one of the directors of Balancing Monkey Games since 2017, and in an active role since probably 2020. I've also been on a lot of boards and so on in the past for a long time, but what I'm really looking forward to is at Balancing Monkey Games, we've got a culture that I'm really, really proud of. We've worked hard with our team to come up with a set of guiding principles that keep us on track and keep us all really happy and focused and healthy as people. And part of our kaupapa is bringing that to a wider community. So I'm really excited to be able to bring our values of diversity and integrity and sustainability to the NZGDA and work out of that kaupapa. So thanks.
Awesome. Can't wait to have that energy on the board and seeing how that manifests its way into what we do and then the community at large. Thank you, Anna.
Thanks, Carl.
I'll hand it over to Stacey.
Kia ora. Thanks so much. I'm really excited to be joining the board as someone from outside the industry, but a lifelong enjoyer of it. I can't remember a time in my life where I haven't been gaming, so I'm really excited to try and give a bit back to the industry that's given me so much over my life. Before the BSA, where I've worked for 2 years, I worked first as a journalist and then an IP lawyer, and then for several years at Engineering New Zealand, which is the membership organisation for engineers in New Zealand. And during the time that I was there, the organisation was going through huge growth, a lot of transformation, and in terms of how it served its members, its capability to represent the profession, providing useful tools and resources. So all of the great things that you are trying to do more of. So I see a lot of potential for growth, and you're obviously already giving heaps of thought to how that's going to happen. And I am really excited to contribute to that and grateful for the opportunity. Look forward to meeting more people as we go along.
Ka pai. Thank you, Stacey. Awesome. And I also want to call out how at last year's AGM, Anna had a question and she said, why aren't there more females running to be on the board? And lo and behold, here we are 12 months later, Anna has been voted in, as well as 2 other females onto the board. And I think that that's really exciting to see the, just the diversity and inclusion that our board is starting to shape up to be, as well as, Josh and Johnson representing the Māori there's just it is a really great diverse board. Not saying that there wasn't, that didn't exist previously, but it's really awesome to see how that manifested after Anna's comment last year, and just seeing how that will take shape for our board in the coming year, coming couple years. Awesome. And now I want to just take a moment to share as anyone who has been involved with anything NZGDA related, whether it's emailing at info@nzgda.com or attending one of our events or having an issue with logging into the member hub or trying to get a job listed up on the website, you would have encountered Joy or Gina. And I just want to give a shout out to the efforts that both of them have made over the last year, almost 2 years. Joy will be celebrating 2 years with the NZGDA in February, and the operations team is really the solution to the board burning themselves out year on year up until they came on. So I really appreciate the time and effort and all the upskilling and learning that Joy's been doing about the games industry. And I feel like you're fairly close to being a subject matter expert now on the industry and games in general. And I know that was one point when you started that was an unknown, because you'd brought your experience as an executive for ITP, a very successful and long-standing membership organization. That knowledge you had was so valuable for us, and that gap in the games industry was a mention. But I love that we've gotten to this point, and now I come to you sometimes with questions around certain studios or certain games, and it's awesome to see how much you've grown over time. And Gina has been the one that saved my butt for when she came on board and took over all of the social media and all of the newsletter responsibilities, and so much more than that. But it helped me take a big step back from being close to burning out with all of those things. And I want to take a moment to just appreciate how great it is to have experienced what the board was like before an operations team to afterwards. It feels amazing. And not only that, I put a mention here of community advocates, and every year there's constantly people that reach out wanting to support, or people that offer their time, and we're constantly finding ways of activating these people. And whether it's volunteer at NZGDC or even in more of a stronger capacity, like being part of the committee of NZGDC, for example, And some of the names here are some of the people that were big supporters, and they gave their time to support with initiatives for the NZGDA, especially around NZGDC. And yeah, we're slowly carving out how we can bring those people in that have the time or have the knowledge and resources to support our operations team in more ways. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that. Joy or Gina, is there anything that either of you wanted to mention while we have your faces up?
Well, that was unexpected. I think, and I'm speaking on behalf of Gina here, I know she'll be sitting behind the screen thinking very seriously, but I think the biggest thing that has enabled both myself and Gina to fit into this gaming industry after being in a semi-related industry is the fact that you're all welcoming and supportive, and no question is too dumb. I love that you're able to give us passionate feedback and passionate advice. So yeah, both of us really appreciate that.
Thank you, Joy. Gina, was there anything you wanted to say?
She's put 100% in the chat.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Gina, and look forward to seeing what more we can do, and what, I don't want to say more work we can throw your way, because I think especially leading up to NZGDC, we were at capacity, but we'll find more ways to have fun and connect and grow together. So yeah, thank you so much. And with that, I'm going to move over to the next section, which is updates, which I will be throwing it back over to you, Joy, to touch on some of these. I am just conscious of time, 8 minutes, but I think we can do it. I'll throw it over to you, Joy.
Thanks, Carl. Well, tēnā kōrua, everybody. I wanted to share a few important updates with you. You've probably heard me talking about them throughout the year, and I thought this would be a great place to sum it all up. First is the NZGDA constitution, which that we are reviewing at the moment. This is a vital step to ensure that our constitution is fit for purpose, provides the right level of governance for our current and our future needs, and meets the requirements of the Incorporated Societies Act, which changed in 2022. As we continue to grow and evolve as an organisation, this review will ensure that our foundation is strong and supports the long-term goals of NZGDA. Alongside the constitution will be bylaws, a separate document that we can formalise things like membership fees and structure, operational standards, policies, complaint handling procedures, and so on. When both documents have been completed and reviewed by our legal team, we will then open it up to consultation, probably early February, and look to call an SGM for late March to adopt those new documents. If you're interested in getting involved with this, please just drop me an email and let me know. Your feedback would absolutely be appreciated, and your input, obviously. Next screen, Carl. I want to talk about our member benefits. Recently, I was made aware that some people don't even know that we have all these things. So I'll just quickly skip through these so that you can hear what we've done in the last 12 months, what we've implemented for you. So on the left-hand side, you'll see benefits available to individual members. And on the right-hand side, benefits that are available to studio members. And by studio member, I mean a studio who employs people rather than one-man bands, or excuse me, or very, very small indies who might not be able to afford the studio membership fees. So as an individual, you'll now have access to a resource library containing valuable guides, templates, and tools to help you navigate your work. You'll have access to our member-only video vault, which features recordings from previous conferences and also webinars that have happened over the last 3 years. You can access discounts from our partners on everything from legal advice and insurance through to hardware and even the full range of Samsung products. Yes, I'm talking fridges as well. There are details on the AWS programs that are available exclusively to NZGDA members, offering credits and some special pricing. As a member, you will receive invitations to member-only workshops, events, and webinars throughout 2025. Of course, you can keep up to date in the New Zealand Game Dev Slack and also through our newsletters. And for studios that join NZGDA, the benefits are even more extensive. So you'll have access to the Studio Managers Slack channel. My goodness, it must be late in the afternoon. So that you can connect with peers. We also post some updates in there that we don't post in the general channels. You can list jobs on our jobs board for free. We pick up the details that you post in Slack. We pop those on our website and then we promote them out via our social media channels as well. There will be, like we have for every studio member, a profile there on your studio and games that you have developed or brought to life. You'll also get early access to initiatives like the New Zealand Games Directory, which will launch next year. Invitations for exclusive events like the annual Studio Managers Summit and access to quarterly ED reports, or I do a 15-minute, 30-minute stand-up every quarter. And perhaps most importantly for the studio members, all staff at studios who are members get access to all the individual membership benefits that I mentioned before. So we think that this is a testament to our commitment to delivering value to all members, whether you're an individual developer or part of a larger studio. We're excited about how these resources and opportunities will continue to support you and the growth of our industry, and we're excited to see how many more we can put in there because we will always be updating it. Now, the benefits is a nice segue into a membership review. So this review is focused on creating a fairer cost structure for all levels of membership. Our aim is to ensure that everyone, whether you are a student, an individual, or a studio, feels that your membership provides value and aligns with your contributions. Let's address the elephant in the room. Am I talking about reviewing membership fees, which in turn could mean higher costs? Yes. We're looking at the membership pricing and have completed researching models that other GDAs around the globe are using. We've also looked at other membership organisations in New Zealand, and we think that with a suitable membership framework, we should be able to serve our community better and hope to offer travel grants to support members attending important industry events, provide scholarships for students and early career developers to access education, training and mentorship. We want to run more physical events across New Zealand, creating additional opportunities for networking, collaboration and learning. And lastly, support attendance at external conferences and expos, enabling members to showcase their work and gain valuable insights. Back in July, we set up a focus group to help guide this mahi. However, due to a significant workload in the lead up to NZGDC and Wellington Games Week, I had to temporarily put this work on hold. The good news is that we will be reactivating this focus group shortly, and I'm looking forward to getting this important work back on track and included in the bylaws being delivered in February. Once again, if you're interested in helping out with that, just drop me an email. We'd love to have you involved. Now, membership growth, the slide that we have up there at the moment, I'd like to share some key insights into NZGDA's membership growth and how it's shaping the future of the organisation and our industry. Since introducing paid memberships, NZGDA has experienced steady growth across all categories. The introduction of student membership last year has been a particular highlight, capturing significant numbers of eager and emerging talent. However, as is common in many organisations, student memberships are also our most volatile category, and this is largely due to students transitioning in and out of education and their changing needs over that time. Let's take a closer look at where we are today. As of November 22nd, NZGDA has 354 paid memberships, which is a significant milestone in our journey. When we include complementary memberships, such as the memberships that staff of studios get and also the partner organisations, we have a total membership of 919. When we look at membership types, student memberships, which are the blue bar, have shown the most activity since March 2023. In fact, they're now on par with the number of individual memberships which we have, and they're shown in red. Meanwhile, studio memberships, shown in yellow, are steadily growing, as is the financial partnerships, which are grey at the very top of the bars there, which we've recently strengthened and is of a particular focus to us at the moment. Revenue generated from paid memberships has enabled us to make good progress. Membership fees now cover 60% of NZGDA's operational expenses, with the remaining 40% drawn from NZGDC revenue. This model has laid the foundations of financial stability we need to achieve some major milestones. So if we jump to the next slide, Carl. This graph highlights the changes in our income and expenses over the past 5 years. The blue line indicates our income, and the stacked bars break down expenses just into 3 broad categories: salaries and contractors, highlighted in yellow, NZGDC costs, highlighted in blue, and OPEX/other, which is red. You'll see that the OPEX other costs, which are in red, were reduced in 2024 when you look at 2023. We started very tightly managing our expenses. Well, when I came on board, I started dropping a lot of things that we didn't really need to have, and that's enabled us to reduce expenses to a more palatable amount. Of course, this is going to continue on into the current financial year as well. We will keep reviewing those costs. NZGDC costs in blue have increased significantly, as Lance said, due to the increased venue costs at Takina. I'd like to note that there wasn't a conference in 2021 due to COVID, which is why that data is not showing in the graph. Membership fees were introduced in 2022 to cover the resourcing of the association. There's some key steps that we've taken to achieve more savings this year. We've moved away from relying on contractors and bringing all of that work in-house. So the admin support, the private conference organizer like Lance mentioned, PR, websites and graphic design. This alone has reduced our costs by $150,000. We are always looking, as I said before, at reducing subscriptions and other recurring costs so that we can maximise our bottom line. There's also been a focus on growing the membership, as you can see from that graph a few slides back, and that also helps build our resilience and essentially strengthen our financial position in the current year, so that we can start growing the association and considering initiatives that directly benefit our members and the broader game development community. Back to you, Carl.
Nice. Fantastic work, Joy, and really appreciate seeing the numbers there. And just a reminder, those slides were about the 2024 financial year. So there wasn't information on this year's operating expenses, salaries, contractors, and like Joy said, we saved on was 150,000, which will be exciting to see next year's chart and how that has affected the bottom line and how we're kind of bracing for this period of having to dip into our reserves slightly. Awesome. So I know we've passed 5 and people might be eager to jump out. So I'm not going to spend too long on this next bit, but there's only a couple more. It's actually the last slide. So the reason I just wanted to touch on this is before we bid farewell to everyone, and who knows at what points we'll be connecting with you again over the next calendar year, but some future areas that we're going to focus on. From my perspective, I think membership clarity and really digging into what value each member is getting, from our studios to individual members to this growing amount of students that are finding out about the NZGDA and our partnership organizations, and really breaking down and simplifying what we're providing to each of them and ensuring that that's reflective in what those members are expecting from us. So there's a lot of clarity and discussions that I want us to have about that in the next year. Alignment with supporting orgs. So over the last year, with New Zealand On Air being the one administering the GDSR and Code going national and having more and more impact on a national basis with our studios, we want to make sure that we're continuing to build a strong relationship and aligning with our values and theirs as well, and making sure that we're all working together to build an even better place. So there's work there that we want to do as we're continuing to grow and discover our strengths as well. Having a lean operations team, so having knowing where our expenses are going, and pretty much just touching on what Lance mentioned earlier around us having to dip into our reserves. That means that a focus over the next year has to be really focusing on what is critical for us to deliver on our strategic plan, with minimal, I guess, risk, and focusing on what we do really well. and just making sure we get through the year financially stable. That is definitely going to be a focus for us. Strengthening international partnerships. Joy went to GDC back in March to scope it out and see what kind of use having NZGDA representation could be there. And that is something we want to continue doing. We've built a lot of relationships since then and invited quite a few more international guests to NZGDC this year, and that's growing in interest globally as well. As New Zealand continues to grow, so is the international interest, and we want to make sure we are providing as many opportunities and value to those people reaching out. And then community feedback. So in our annual survey, we asked everyone what they would like to see more from the NZGDA, and crunching this data and going back and understanding it in more detail is really important to us, and that's something we will continue to do, as well as having regular check-ins with all of our members. Joy, as she said, having a quarterly check-in stand up with our members is really important to us to make sure we're iterating and adapting as the industry is evolving. But this annual survey data is also really valuable for us to look at a bigger scale of what the majority of members would like to see. So yeah, that was just a little bit that I wanted to touch on. I will end it there. So that's our AGM. I hope that was valuable and interesting. If there are any questions, I will check the chat in a quick second, but these are our details if you want to contact me directly or Joy directly, or if you just want to send a general inquiry to our email, that is it there. And you can find all this on our website as well, nzgda.com. But if there are no questions, I will do the closing karakia. But jumping into the chat now, it doesn't look like there's anything here. So yeah, I really appreciate everyone, especially sticking around past 5. I'm sure everyone's got families and commitments that they need to get to at the end of the day. So let me give us the closing karakia here. Ka whakairia te tapu, kia watia ai te ara, kia turuki whakataha ai, kia turuki whakataha ai. Haumie, huiei, taikie. Thank you everyone for your time, your input, and welcome to the new board members. Can't wait to get underway in the new year. But awesome, thanks everyone. Have a great rest of your week.